Hey, we're glad that you guys are here. I'm just a little bit excited today to preach the word. Been looking forward. I love having a break. I'm very grateful for 2 weeks where we had guys fill the pulpit, but I love preaching the word, and so I've been really excited the past couple of weeks. Really been able to have a lot of really good quality time spending in prayer and asking God about the vision of our church and our future and where we're going. So really glad that you are here this morning because today we are beginning a brand new 5-week series that I'm probably more excited about than any other series that I've preached so far. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting, and we're going to have a great time through this. And when you hear the title, some of you, well, it's already up there, but some of you might be tempted to zone out thinking, well, I'm not dating anybody. I'm not engaged. I'm not married. But stick with it because I promise you this series is going to apply to every single person in every season of life. And so today we're beginning a new series called I Want a New Marriage. And the goal of this series is we want to talk about some critical components of every healthy marriage. So some things that every healthy marriage needs. And we also want to talk about some areas that can cause some problems and friction. And if you aren't married, that's okay because most of you are going to end up getting married at some point in your life. And it's great to learn this stuff before you even go into marriage. I know, like when Chelsea and I got married, we really didn't have any good premarital counseling going in. So everything of marriage just hit us. And so this is great information for you to have, again, whatever season of life that you're in. And if you're single and that's the way God has called you to remain, now I still believe that this series is for you because you're just going to learn some really good things about how you can communicate and work with other people and other relationships in your life. So everything we're talking about the next 5 weeks is applicable to you. And I've been really excited I've been waiting for like 2 years. We're 2 years old as a church, and I've been wanting to do a marriage series since we began. So really pumped to get into this. A while back, we did a small group study through a book by a pastor called Craig Rochelle, and the study was called From This Day Forward, and we did that as a small group, and it was really impactful for me, and so I want to share, this series is kind of loosely based off of that, and we're going to apply some of the same principles. And here's the direction we're going to be taking for the next 5 weeks. Here we go. Today, we're going to be talking about seek the one. Everybody say seek the one. Seek the one. Okay, and I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Next week, the second week, we're going to be discussing how to fight right. Wow, that was embarrassing. Okay, we're going to be talking about how to handle healthy conflict and how to have good discussions in our marriages. So we're going to talk about how to fight the right way. And then the third week, we're going to learn to talk back, which sounds negative, but it's actually really positive because we're going to be talking about communication because communication actually begins most of the fights that we see in marriage. So we're going to talk about communication. And then week 4, we're going to be talking about family fun. It's going to be my favorite. We're talking about sex, and I am so excited. It's going to be so awkward for you, but it will be wonderful for me. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. And then the last week, we're going to finish up with... Okay, you guys need some help repeating. That's okay. We're going to work on it. For better, for worse. And we're going to wrap up the series with learning how to build a marriage that lasts even through the difficult times. Now, in case you didn't know, all of our regroups have officially started back up. And I know we have some that meet on Sunday nights. I believe they're not meeting tonight because I guess the Super Bowl is going on. Nobody cares about the Super Bowl this year because it's the Patriots. But anyway, no, don't woo that. Nobody likes the Patriots. But they're starting up this week, and in all of our regroups, those are just our fancy term for community groups. They're going to be following this series, and we're going to be writing discussion questions so that you can hear this on Sunday, plug into a group, and then take it further and really discuss that. If you're not in a regroup, I would encourage every single person to go to a regroup, like starting this week. They are really the most important thing you can do to grow in your relationship with Christ and to grow in your relationship with each other. So get connected to a regroup. All of them are on our website. You can check them out there. So anyway, All that's done. Today we want to kick off this series by talking I Want a New Marriage by talking about seeking the one. Now I'm just wondering, how many of you are single or dating? Just raise your hand if you are not married. Okay, look around. Look around, you're going to see some good prospects. This is good. This is good. And also, we have a young adult singles group that meets Sunday nights. So another opportunity for you if you want to get to know other singles and pursue marriage. Church is a much better place than the bar. So just find somebody that you can connect with. It's going to be awesome. And if you're one of those who are dating, there's a good chance that you are seeking the one, as people like to say. And you'll continue to seek the one until you find that person in your life that you just connect with and they become your everything and you get married. And that's why you have to go through the misery of dating. Because once you get married, you realize how terrible that season was. Dating is awful. But once you go through dating, you find someone, you find the one. And then you get married and your life is good. Now, I want to ask a question for the married people. Married people, raise your hand. Okay. Oh, wow. Like everybody. So a lot of married people. Now, I don't want a show. I'm going to ask you a question. It's very important that you don't do a show of hands. It's very important that you don't say amen because, well, you'll see why in a minute. But I'm going to ask you a question. Has anyone ever been guilty of thinking, I want a new marriage? Again, that's why I don't want you to raise your hands because you're going to get in a lot of trouble. That is something, as you get married, as you go through marriage, you realize marriage is hard. And that's something that you can't explain to someone who's dating or engaged. Every time we do premarital counseling, someone asks me, everyone says marriage is hard, but why is it hard? And it's just something you can't explain. You just need to experience it for yourself. And marriage is difficult, and there are times as you go through your married life, sometimes it's really, really great. And you both are connected and having fun. But other times you're thinking, man, I just want a new marriage. I want to restart. This isn't working out the way I thought it would. My hopes and dreams aren't coming true. Because marriage just gets really, really difficult at certain seasons of your life. Especially if you're not connected to the Father. And it's interesting. When you are dating and you find the one, you will realize later in life, after you've gotten married, that they aren't so perfect after all. They seem perfect when you're dating. You know, ladies, that guy is going to do everything he can to woo you. But after you get married, that's when the real person comes out. And you realize they're not perfect because the person you marry will come with some sort of baggage. The person you marry will, maybe is coming into that marriage with a history or some things that they regret. And they're going to come in with problems. And all of these things that you're doing now, teenagers, I can't stress this enough. The decisions you make now will impact your future marriage. It will. I never thought it would happen. When I was a teenager, it's kind of like, well, I'm just living a day at a time. Everything's fine. And I was doing things and I was making mistakes, but I was thinking everyone else is. And then you get married one day and you realize that, man, I've got to bring all this baggage, and it's going to affect my marriage. And that's why it's important that you start understanding now some of these concepts, because I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I made. I don't want you to come into a marriage, with baggage. Now, maybe you've already made mistakes. That doesn't mean there's not hope. God gave me an absolutely incredible woman that I don't deserve at all. And we've worked through things and we have a wonderful, incredible marriage. I'm just saying it's easier if you can learn these concepts now and not bring baggage into a marriage. Because, and you probably know this, statistics say that now it's more than half, 52% of all marriages end in divorce. 52%. More than half of everybody who gets married does end in divorce. And this statistic isn't, I wish I could say it's just for non-Christians, but it's not. It's for Christians too. This is like across the board, people who get married, 52%. So there's a greater chance when you get married that it will end in divorce than not. And that's not good. That's not good odds. And of those 48% of marriages that do make it, most of those marriages turn out to be very unhealthy. They turn out to be, you're staying together for the kids. You don't want to go through the embarrassment of divorce. And so you just become roommates. So of the marriages that make it, so many marriages aren't thriving and aren't really going well. And that's why we're doing this marriage series, because marriage isn't just supposed to be something that you suffer through. You aren't just supposed to feel stuck to that one person. Marriage is something that God designed to be wonderful. God designed marriage to be beautiful. And marriage should be fun and exciting and not boring and unadventurous. And ladies, if your marriage isn't what you've dreamed about since you were a little girl, don't give up. Because God can absolutely restore your marriage. Let's circle back to that 50% divorce rating. Those aren't good odds. And I want you to think about those odds in other areas of your life. So think about that statistic, greater chance of failure. If you had a 45% chance of surviving a plane that you were going to get on, if you were going to fly out this afternoon and the pilot said, hey, welcome everybody, you have a 45% chance of arriving at your destination alive, would you be okay with those odds? No, you would not. You'd be like, get me out of here. You would not be comfortable with those odds if you were getting on a plane where you knew you had a greater chance of dying. And if you were making an investment in the stock market and you only had a 48% chance that investment would be successful and have a good return, you would be thinking about other investment options. That's not a good success rate. If you love steak for dinner, if steak is your favorite food, but you knew I have a 52% chance of if I eat this steak, I'm going to die, you might think about eating something else for dinner because you wouldn't want to take that chance. You would not be comfortable with 52% failure rate in any other area of your life. And so what I'm saying is you shouldn't be content with that in your marriage. You shouldn't be content with thinking, boy, we've got a 48% chance of making it. Hope this works out. Everybody else is doing marriage a way that's not working. And so the point is we need to get to where we are guaranteed success in our marriages. Where we know, where we can trust that this is going to work out good. We don't want a marriage like everybody else's because every other marriage stinks. And so we need to figure out how to build marriages that last. And the most important thing you can do in your marriage, and I truly believe this, the most important thing that you could possibly do is by seeking the one. It's the most important thing you can do in your marriage is by seeking the one. Not seeking the one as in the one that you're going to marry one day, but in seeking the one. Seeking God before anyone or anything else. And if you seek God in your marriage, I promise you, your marriage will be turned upside down. It will change everything about you and your spouse. And your marriage, if it's not in a good place, the good news is it can be restored. And God can work a miracle in your marriage today, beginning today. And I'm not just talking to married couples, again, with this principle. Those of you who are single, this is the most important thing you can do now. I know you're seeking the one that you're going to spend your life with. But if you can begin seeking the one, well, that's going to impact the one that you find. And learn to seek the one as in learn to seek God before you seek the one as in the one you're going to marry. And you have to seek, here's the key, you've got to seek the right one. You have to seek the right one. And I want you to write down if you're taking notes, seek the right one. Listen to what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37. One of the most important teachings he gave in his day. Incredibly influential then, super applicable now. And listen to what he says. Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And this is the first and greatest commandment." And notice what Jesus didn't say. Jesus didn't say, love your wife with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. He didn't say, ladies, love your husband with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. No, he said, you must love the who? The Lord your God. You must love the Lord your God. What Jesus is ultimately saying, what he's getting at here, is that it's more important to love God than your spouse. It is way more important to love God than your wife. It's way more important to love God than your husband. It's more important to love God than your kids. You should love God more than anyone or anything else in your entire life. I was talking to Lucy the other day. Lucy is my 4-year-old daughter, my youngest. And they do this thing where it's like, I love you as much as the sky. I love you as much as the universe. I love you, as much as, this chair, just things like that. And she said, I love you as much as I love God. I was like, oh no, baby, we don't say that. We don't say that. That's not good to say because we need to love, God more than anything else. And then she asked me if I loved mommy more than I loved God. And I told her, and I felt really noble saying this. And in retrospect, it probably wasn't the best answer. And I was like, no, baby, I do not love your mom more than God. And that's pretty deep teaching for a 4-year-old. And so I had to quickly clarify, no, I love mommy. I don't tell anybody that I don't love mommy. But I love God more than I love mommy because anyway, I had to really re-explain that. But her trouble comprehending that I could love God more than I could love her mommy isn't just something that's difficult to understand because she's a child. It's actually difficult for most people to understand how you can actually love God more than anyone or anything else and still be the right thing to do for your life. Because we're taught by the world to love our families and our wives or our kids more than anything else. But what the Bible says is that in our order of priorities, as far as the things that we love, the more we love Jesus, the better we can love our families. The more I love Jesus, the better I can love my wife. Because in reality, you will never be able to love your wife the way you need to until you love Jesus the way you're supposed to. You will never be able to love your wife the way you need to until you love Jesus the way you're supposed to. And the more I love Jesus, the more I'm equipped to love my wife. And vice versa. I don't want my wife to love me more than she loves God. I don't want Chelsea to love me more than she loves God. I want a wife, and I have a wife, that is head over heels in love with God. And because of that, she loves me better. The more she loves God, the better she'll love me. The more you love God, the better you can actually love your spouse. But the problem is, we really get it all backwards, and we marry the one, and we idolize the one, and believe that our source of happiness is that person in our lives. Okay, we get married and we think this person is the answer to all my problems. Like they're gonna fix me. They're gonna bring me, ultimate happiness in our lives. And people disappoint you, don't they? People are gonna disappoint you. And listen, this is one of the most important things I think I'm gonna say this morning, and you need to get this. Your spouse cannot take the place in your life that rightfully belongs to God. Your spouse cannot take the place in your life that rightfully belongs to God, because your husband or your wife, as wonderful as they might be, they will never live up to your expectations. Ever. They will never live up to your expectations. Ladies, some of you have been dreaming about your husband since you were a little girl. Chances are, your husband, the one you marry one day, is not going to meet all those expectations, because again, when you were a little girl, that's just all you wanted to do. You wanted to get married because that person would bring you happiness and purpose and joy. And that's just not going to happen. When you look to your spouse as the ultimate fulfillment to your life, and you look to your spouse to bring you peace and joy, you are placing unrealistic expectations on them that they will never be able to fulfill. Why? Because only God can do those things. Your spouse, and no matter how great they are, cannot bring you purpose. Your spouse, no matter how great they are, cannot edify you all the time. They can't bring you ultimate happiness and joy. Those are things that only God can do. Only God can give you purpose. Only God can give you happiness and peace and joy. And it's not fair to put those expectations on your husband or on your wife. It's not a position that they were ever meant to fill. Now, I'm not saying have low expectations. I'm not saying find someone who's going to disappoint you in every area of your life because you just need Jesus. Ladies, have high expectations. Guys, have high expectations, but just don't expect them to do something in your life that only God can do. If you want a marriage that's built to last, find someone who will love Jesus more than you. Find someone who will seek Jesus more than you. Find someone who you can seek Jesus with together. And ultimately seek the right one together. I love, again, we talked about Pastor Craig Rochelle doing the series. I love what he said. He said, I will seek the one with my two. I will seek the one with my two. Because God is your one. God is your one, and your spouse is your two. God is your top priority in your life. God is your first love. And right below that is your spouse. Jesus is your first love. Your spouse should be your second. And if the two of you aren't seeking the one together, you're going to have real serious troubles in your marriage. Because your marriage will not be what it's supposed to be unless God is your number one in your lives and your spouse is your number two. You have to seek God together. And one of the greatest ways that you can seek the one with your two is simply by praying together. And that's the second thing I want you to write down. In your marriage, there is almost nothing more important than prioritizing the power of prayer. By prioritizing the power of prayer in your marriage. And this is a really tough one for couples. Every time I meet with a lot of married couples, and every time I ask them, are you guys praying together? What's your prayer life look like? It's always just real awkward, and they know what the answer should be. We should be praying together. And so they kind of shuffle around, and it's really weird. And because most married couples they're not praying together. Most married couples they're not praying on their own, much less are they praying with their spouse. And most Christian couples are not praying at all together. Even though it should be one of the highest priorities in their relationship, they're completely neglecting it. And praying together and worshiping together is I can't stress the importance of that in your marriage or in your relationships. Listen to what Paul says in Colossians chapter 3. This is incredible. Colossians 3:16, he says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. What would your marriage look like if you actually did that? What would it look like? I guarantee you, if you prayed together and you worshiped together, and you sang songs together and went to church together and went to a regroup together, you would begin to see some serious change in your marriage, because there's always a positive return for obedience to God's word. Always a positive return. But I know how this always goes. Every time I ask a man, are you praying with your wife? Are you leading your wife spiritually? Are you studying the word together? I always get the same response from every guy. But Kyle, I'm really uncomfortable praying with my wife. Man, I don't know what to say. It's really weird. It's really awkward. Can't we just come to church and listen to you pray? Can't we just come to church and sing songs? Can't we just come to church and worship together there? No, because God hasn't called me to be the spiritual leader of your home. Men, God has called you. That's one of those areas that you might not like it. You might not think it's fair, but it's God's word, so you can't argue with it. It is not my job to lead your family spiritually. It's not. Men, it is your job to do that. I could try to meet up with you. I could try to encourage you and coddle you and hold your hand. But at some level, I have to tell you to man up. Get on your knees. Pray with your wife. Pray for your wife. Pray for your kids. Let your kids see your example. Kids need to see that today. They need to see you, men, leading your families. Way too many men are just embarrassed to pray. Way too many men aren't reading God's word. Men, you have got to step up. You have got to begin seeking the one with your two and setting an example for your family. Only you can do that. I see you guys for an hour a week on Sunday mornings. That is not enough for me to really pour into you spiritually what you need. The rest of the week, the rest of the days in the week, that's all you. And you have got to take responsibility, and you have to be a man, and you have to lead your families. Single ladies, I'll give you some really good advice. Find yourself a guy who's willing to pray for you now. Find someone who is willing to pray with you now, because if he won't pray with you now, he won't pray with you when you're married. I promise you that. Find a guy, date a guy, marry a guy that is willing to pray with you now. You have every right to have a high expectation that your man is capable of leading you and your future family spiritually. You have every right to expect that. When Chelsea and I were dating, maybe it was before we were dating. This is when MSN Messenger was still really big, or AOL or whatever it was. And, so we're messaging each other. It was like 2 a.m. and, we're so giddy for each other. And she sent me a message and she was like, do you think you're capable of leading me? Made the time, doo-doo-doo. And I got it, I read it. Do you think you're capable of leading me spiritually? I'm like, oh my gosh. That's a really deep question at 2 a.m. over AOL Messenger. And I responded, I don't know. Right now, no, I'm probably not capable of leading you spiritually, but I can make you a promise that I'll get there. I can make you a promise that I'll strive, that I'll try. Because pretty much since I've met Chelsea, she has just spiritually, blown me out of the water. She loves Jesus. That was what attracted me to her in the first place, was her love for the Lord. But single ladies, find yourself a guy who's willing to pray with you now. Find yourself a guy who is willing to lead you spiritually in the future, or willing to grow in that area. The only way you are going to know if he's capable of doing that is by praying together now, by seeking God together now. Let him prove that he loves God more than he loves you. Let him prove that he's more committed to God before you, because that's the way it should be. Because praying together is a very intimate thing. It draws you closer together because you're drawing closer to Jesus. And think about it, it's really difficult to pray with someone you're mad at. Married couples? Sometimes, a couple weeks ago, Chelsea and I had a disagreement. And I get she's wonderful, but she drives me nuts. And I was so mad at her. I don't know, it was for something stupid, I'm sure she would say. I was so mad at her, and I was getting ready to go. I was like, I'm just gonna go drive around, because I do that when I get mad. And she goes, I want you to pray with me first. And there is nothing that's more difficult to do than to pray for someone you're mad at. Have you ever tried it? You're so mad, you don't want to see them. They're driving you crazy, but you're like, Jesus, I don't like this person right now, but I'm supposed to love them. So God, would you just give me patience? And it's amazing. When you pray with someone, your anger melts away. It melts away. Because what you're doing is you are seeking the one with your two. And you can do that when your marriage is healthy, and you can do it, especially, it's important, when you're going through trials in your marriage. It's impossible to pray with someone and to stay angry with them, because prayer changes everything. Prayer is the most important thing you and your spouse can do together, because that's just the proof that you are seeking the one. Remember that statistic I gave you earlier, that 52% of marriages end in divorce? Well, listen to this. This should blow your mind. A few years ago, Family Life did a study on prayer and marriage. And this is an amazing testimony to the important. If you don't believe prayer is important for your marriage, this will change everything, I promise you. Listen to this. Of couples that pray together regularly, fewer than 1% of those marriages end in divorce. What? I was looking for that. Thank you. Of couples that pray together, this changes your marriage. If you want your marriage to end in divorce, if you want your marriage to be like everybody else's, if you just want to go with that 52% chance of failure, then do marriage like everybody else. But if you want your marriage to succeed, then here is a guaranteed way to see it succeed. Of couples that pray together regularly, fewer than 1% of those marriages end in divorce. What do you want? 52% chance of failure or 1% chance? That is the key. This is the most important thing that you can do with your spouse. Who wouldn't want those odds in your marriage? Who wouldn't want that success rate? If you would just pray with your wife, if you would just pray with your husband, you are virtually guaranteeing that your marriage will make it. That's why praying together is one of the greatest things that you can do in your marriage, because by praying together, you are seeking the one with your two. And prayer can restore and revitalize any marriage. Listen to what Job says in chapter 5, verse 8. He says, as for me, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause, who does great things and unsearchable marvelous things without number. Seek God in your marriage. Commit your relationship to him. Your marriage isn't too far gone to be saved. It's not. Maybe today you need to talk with your spouse. You need to apologize for any past mistakes and have a new beginning, because when you commit your cause to the Lord, he will do great and marvelous things. I'm going to ask the worship team to come up here. Tabby and Greg, I think they're doing invitation. And I just would like, Greg, if you could just play something on the piano, that would be great. And I know we're running short on time, but we're just going to kind of not look at the clock right now, because I think this is important. I think this could save some marriages. I want to do a little exercise together. As we close this morning and go into our time of invitation, I want to ask you right now to put into practice what we've talked about this morning. And if you're married, I want you to pray with your spouse right here and right now. And if your spouse isn't with you this morning, I want you to pray with them in the car on the way home or when you get home. But I want you to, even now, seek the one in your relationship. Because maybe you've messed up, maybe your marriage is on the rocks, maybe it's not going well at all. It doesn't matter. The family that prays together stays together. And today is a new day, and God is giving you a new opportunity to have the marriage of your dreams, but more importantly, a marriage that brings him glory.